This is Seeing Red, now in our 15th season of bringing you the best in independent Red Bulls news and opinion. Now, here are your hosts, Mark Fishkin and Joe Goldstein.
No Forsberg, no Morgan, no goals. The Red Bulls create more scoring chances, but still can't find the net as the scoreless streak reaches 2 matches. It's Seeing Red, the New York Soccer Roundup. I'm Mark Fishkin, joined tonight by Mike Batista. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well. You know, it's been a very weird time with the Red Bulls, but there's still a lot of positives here.
Yeah, certainly a lot of positives. Tonight we'll go inside the scoreless draw against Nashville. We'll give our Bull of the Week. We'll look back at the TST tournament, which finished up last week with a whole lot of Red Bull New York flavor. We'll preview New York's visit to a toasty Montreal on Wednesday night. We'll give our prediction. Our guest is Tony Marinaro of the Montreal-based SICK podcast, CF Montreal Talk. And then we've got some emails as well. So we learned pregame Emil Forsberg has a foot thing that he picked up with the Swedish national team. Not great, Bob. But New York comes out against Nashville, and they do a lot of really good things. And it looked a whole lot better than it did against New England, Mike.
No, they did. And they kept Nashville off the score or off the shots at all. Like for the first 45 minutes, they had nothing. They were not getting the ball against Ryan Mira or even close to Ryan Mira. The back line was communicating well with the midfield. And overall, it looked like the offense was gelling up until the final third, which is something that we've come to expect with Red Bull soccer in a sense. But overall, there were a lot of good things going, except the fact that they couldn't score. And I think Sandro said after the game that, you know, sometimes you just don't score and you have to keep the other team off the board. And that's what they did.
Yeah. New York was a lot more direct that they've been. And part of that was Nashville getting turned over. But, I mean, there were 4 or 5 different scoring attacks up the middle during the match in the first half. And that's something that we haven't seen a lot of, right? This team oftentimes, well, they're scoring goals on free kicks for sure, but they're slow and steady, waiting for the final dissecting pass, sometimes waiting too long. But nevertheless, we saw a number of runs where 3 and 4 Red Bulls attackers got into it. As you said, the last action never really came. We had Dylan Nealis denied a goal. We had Noah Ayla denied a goal on a foul right before his shot was taken. Frankie Maya shot from long range. Ayla had a header wide. Like, this was attacking and entertaining soccer, except for the lack of goals.
And Dylan Nealis really impressed me during his game against Nashville, because not only was he playing well in defense, like I said before, you saw Nashville getting held up far before the penalty box. They were not getting anything on him. He was working with the midfield to start a place, and then he was getting offensive chances, like a goal called back, a couple other shots on goal. He was a full field threat, something that I more think of a John Tolkien to do more than Dylan Nealis. Yeah. And it was refreshing to see for someone who last year I hated the fact that we brought him back, and he's really showing that the contract was worth it. Well, this was this is why you signed me kind of game.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then in the second half, we saw a lot of the finishing problems that New York's forwards have had, right? We had a couple of fantastic opportunities by Manuel. One went wide far post. One Manuel scored but was offside. And I have to say, I think Elias Manuel leads the league in beautiful disallowed goals. I mean,
it's really bad.
He has hit some phenomenal finishes that all get taken off the scoreboard. And I mean, they're great for the highlight reel. Maybe you don't tell people, no, that didn't actually count. Van Zier had a weak shot from the top of the box, really kind of the last great scoring chance from New York. And again, you as you noted, Mike, I mean, you heard from Sandro say we created a whole lot. We did a lot of really good things. Again, Nashville has never scored at Red Bull Arena. Again, New York has never lost to Nashville. Again, New York extends the home unbeaten streak. And at just 1 point, and the team moves into third place in the East. So would 2 more points be preferable for sure, but I think building from the New England match to the Nashville match, some good things. And we're not sugarcoating it. I mean, New York's forwards have to do better.
I mean, after we know the deck of cards that this team is playing with right now, injuries, international duty, and that I've had a lot of discussions with fans about, the New England game wasn't that bad because of, both teams are missing players and Rebel couldn't get it done, which just talks about the depth. This game, it's just as frustrating, but it doesn't look as bad in comparison because they got a point.
Yeah.
Overall, I'm still I'm not panic mode, but I'm still in really frustrated mode because we keep getting draws, and this team could be in second place right now.
It could be in first place.
You're right, first place, but I won't, a couple of those draws have to happen. I'm sorry. But there are so many points where we're 2 or 3 games behind FC Cincinnati. They could be a second place team, but they just can't get that final piece.
Well, before we go to Bull of the Week, I mean, let's just talk about, is it fair in a world where New York moves into the top 10 of MLS salary rolls, primarily because they buy Emil Forsberg and they pay him $6 million a year. They're paying Lewis Morgan very well. Is it fair to expect high proficiency when your most 2 important players that have contributed 50% of your team's goals aren't there?
That's a very interesting question. I think that kind of goes back to the fact that Jochen said in the offseason, this team is going to do a lot of heavy investing in the roster, and he did not lie.
Yes.
The fine print was just that 90% of it is one guy.
Yeah.
That strategy has, pros and cons. It works for teams like Miami, but I don't know if it works for the Red Bulls because we've seen the development of Red Bull 2 kind of take a back seat in the recent years with the transition from USL Championship or MLS Next Pro to Major League Soccer. So we don't have the depth that we can, fall back on. And when you only sign 4 guys in the offseason, and only two of them are MLS ready, this is what happens.
Yeah.
And you're not wrong that fans shouldn't be surprised it's happening, but they should be annoyed it's happening.
Yeah, well, and again, the summer window is about to open, and we'll see what happens. Let's give our Bull of the Week. You had said earlier you were very impressed with Dylan Nealis. Does he get your tag this week?
Yeah, listen, I almost put Ryan Mira as a player of the week just because I love the fact he got a clean sheet for the second time in 2024.
Yeah.
But no, Dylan Nealis would be my Bull of the Week. He just had his game to show that he was worth the contract, and even if Nashville wasn't going to score anyway, there were plenty of times where he made his mark on that game. So definitely my Bull of the Week.
I'm going to give mine to Cam Harper, who continues to play well, continues to be kind of the tricky player that I think the team is struggling without perhaps Cam in a more forward role more often. I mean, he's a guy that's going to take people on one-on-one, and he offers a little bit of a different flavor. And I think he confuses defenses because they don't know what to expect from him. And he has really stepped up, going back to his unbelievable banger against NYC. He's picking up a lot of the slack. Now, obviously, 2 games without a goal scored is frustrating, but I continue to see good things. So Dylan Nealis, Cam Harper, you are both our Bulls of the Week. All right, let's turn our attention to Cary, North Carolina, where a couple of weeks ago, June 5th through the 10th, we saw a super fun celebration of soccer. That's TST, or the soccer tournament. If you're not aware, it's the $1 million winner take all 7v7 tournament that was won by La Bombonera, which was sponsored by a soccer palace in Delaware, and I believe a lot of Mexican indoor players were on that roster. And you saw the impact that the MASL guys had all through this tournament, because everyone needed someone that's used to playing in tiny spaces. but there were some fantastic former Red Bulls, and I know, Mike, you wanted to call some of them out.
Oh, yeah, I did. Because I think when I was looking at the rosters, I counted about 12 to 13 teams that had some form of former New York Red Bull flavor in some form. And there were a lot of names. One off the top of my head was Sasha Kljestan, who he already got that. He had that bug in him from U.S. Open Cup playing for Des Moines Menace. He couldn't get out of it. So he jumped on to Sneaky Fox FC, which I believe is a vodka brand.
Yeah, that's Mike McGee's vodka brand, former Metro.
So
there you go.
And he played 4 games. He got eliminated by Nani FC, who in the round of 32, who went on to reach the final of the whole tournament. Brandon Allen played for the Georgetown alumni team, former Red Bull 2 guy, former, I believe, draft pick, right?
He was homegrown, and he was like a USL scoring legend that simply did not have the legs to make it in the big league.
And he had a pretty good form, playing 4 games and making it to the round of 32 as well, but losing to Syria A side Como, who they sent a team for his second year. Mike Grella also was on probably the biggest team of the weekend because he was with Pat McAfee on the Concacaf FC, which is just named after the fact that Pat McAfee does not know how to say the word CONCACAF.
Yes.
And his team was probably the one that was always on ESPN Plus.
Right, because of Pat McAfee. Right.
Because of Pat McAfee. And he got a goal, got an assist, made all the way to the quarterfinals. It was a great time, and he looked good. Overall, there was a lot of fun to be had, and it's great seeing this mix of amateur players, former pros, celebrities, and it's just 5 days, shotgun in your needle in your arm, let's hit it. It's amazing fun. Yeah,
and super fun. And if you're not aware, the guys that started TST came out of the basketball tournament, which is TBT. They use the Elam ending, which basically is at a certain time they take the winning team's score, add 8 points to it, and that's the score that the winning team has to get to, so the game always ends on a winning shot. The way it worked in soccer was after 2 20-minute halves, you add 1 goal to the winning team's goal total, and that's the score that the winning team has to get to. Sometimes the teams were tied going into target score time. You had teams coming back from 2 and 3 goals down in target score time to win. It made it really interesting. And then every 3 minutes in this target score time, each team loses a player. So you go from 7v7. There was a Nani game late in the tournament that was down to 2v2. It was Nani and the goalkeeper. Just phenomenal. And the crazy thing about Mike Grella is he had the goal of maybe the tournament on this beautiful looping ball delivered by Pat McAfee that he volleyed, flying volley into the net. And everyone was all jacked up and said, "Oh my God, look what Pat McAfee did. He made this incredible pass." And it's like, how about ageless wonder Mike Grella with the volley into the net? And these nets are small nets. I mean, they're not regulation nets. And nevertheless, also Dwayne Di Rosario, who is a Red Bull for half a second, had 4 games, 2 goals and an assist for Quick Goal, which was Jimmy Conrad's former team. And then we have some more obscure folks, right?
Yeah. So I just want to bring these 2 up real quick. Jose Guanaca, who is a former MLS draft pick. He played for U23 and Rebel 2 for a hot minute. He was with Gracie FC. But my favorite one was goalkeeper Chris. I'm going to mess this up. Konopka, because he is from Tom's River. He's a journeyman goalkeeper. And he only played 1 game with the Red Bulls. And did you know the game before I put his name in there?
You know what? The fog of memory eluded me at the moment. I know he played for the Red Bulls 1 time in the league. He was the emergency goalkeeper.
He was the e-bug.
Yes, that's right.
We pulled him from the MLS goalie pool because international duty in 2011. So he played 1 game for us, a 2-2 draw against Chicago Fire. And I just love the fact that this dude he was with Quick Goal FC as well. And I love that you can just look at this and you look at his resume and goes, Wait, what do you mean he was on the Red Bulls? What are you talking about?
Yeah, he's
It's
one of
so
those
good.
statistical anomalies like Sal Cacavale, who scored 1 goal for the Metro Stars in his only 11 minutes ever as a professional player.
So good.
So the question is, I mean, we saw a number of pro teams send teams, right? They didn't send their current players. They sent a mix of invitees and maybe sprinkled in with a few former players, but you saw Bayern sent a team, and you saw Borussia Dortmund sent a team, and you say Como Caligari sent a team, and Wrexham obviously sent a men's team and a women's team. I mean, Angel City in the NWSL sent a team. There was a team of former U.S. women, and so I guess the question is, do they send the street team? Like, who do the Red Bulls send?
Well, first off, shout out to Dortmund and Villarreal for sending New York Cosmos players, because if you look at that roster, there were a couple of New York Cosmos guys. Oh, I love that. But I think you got a point there, because last year we saw Charlotte FC send a team for the inaugural TST. And I love the fact that they sent one, because their description was it's going to be a team of academy kids and alumni. And my response was, what do you mean alumni?
Right.
You are 2 years old.
Right.
But
alumni from something.
Exactly. But if you look at the Red Bulls, if you look at North Carolina FC, their team was essentially a Carolina Railhawks alumni team. Their jersey looks like the Carolina Railhawks. They had a bunch of players, the same guys who beat the Galaxy multiple times in the Open Cup, stuff like that. The Red Bulls could do that with the Metro Stars guys, or just Red Bull alumni. You could do that, because we just saw Sasha balance MLS, MLS season pass duties. You could see Bradley Wright Phillips, if he wants to, could do that, because I'm pretty sure he played last year.
Lloyd Sam.
I'm
out of the booth and play, my friend.
Luis Robles. There's so many. He played last year too. You have so much opportunity for this. And if you just say, oh, well, New York Red Bull, maybe that's not interesting enough. Why not Red Bull Global? You can get players from New York, Austria. And if the decision is, well, what's the point? At the end of the day, it's good. It's fun, and it's marketing. Yeah. Why do they do all the stuff with like rocket cars and people jumping out of space? It's marketing. At the same time, you're going to be on ESPN. You're going to be on this, and it's fun. It gets the brand out there, and people would enjoy it.
I believe that the get-in price for new teams was $40,000, which
Correct.
is, I think, the amount of money that is sold in Red Bull land in probably about 4 seconds. $40,000 worth of Red Bull is sold. All right, let's get back to the New York Red Bulls, and let's get back to Montreal away, and we can spend some time talking about CF Montreal Club de Foot. Saturday at 7, Red Bull visits Montreal. They try to break their scoring drought and get their third ever win in Montreal since they entered the league in 2012. It's going to be, Mike, it's going to be 90 degrees at kickoff. And while that may be something in New York, it's something totally different in Montreal. I mean, it's 105 in Montreal.
There's no joke about that. I don't know how you deal with heat in Canada, because no one's expecting it. Yeah. It's going to be miserably humid and muggy up there. It's going to bog down the game immensely.
Yeah. Well, let's get into
game.
Yeah, let's get into Montreal. 4-7-6 for 18 points. They're 12th in the East. They've scored 23 and conceded, 35 goals in 17 games. They give up 2 goals a game. They are next to last in the league in both touches in the opponent's box and in corner kicks, which leads you to understand that they are somewhat troubled. They are also have a very meh record at home. Stade Saputo is usually a fortress for them, and they've only won twice in 7 matches so far this season. Similar to New England a couple of weeks ago, they are tied for 4th in the league in goals conceded after the 75th, and they have the second worst goal differential after the 75th minute, which is exactly what New England had, and New England bettered their GD by 1 against us. This is a team that has made a lot of changes since last year. Aaron Herrera is with DC. Chinoso Ofor is on loan in Bulgaria, which is, I guess, something only that that Saputo does. He sends his players away to Eastern Europe. Argentine attacking midfielder Mato Milevic is with Newell's Old Boys in Argentina. Icelandic center back Robert Thorkelson is on loan in Norway. And in with new coach Laurent Courtois comes Raheem Edwards and Ruan, who came from the Galaxy and DC United, respectively. Uruguayan center back Joaquin Sosa on loan from Bologna. And if you know, the Saputos also own Bologna. There are a lot of Bologna connections always on Montreal. Uruguayan striker Matías Coccaro came from Huracan. And our old friend Joseph Martinez is brought in as a free agent, even though his name ends in a Z and it's an S on your screen. Deal with it. My bad. Overall themes for Montreal, the back line has been really toasted all season long, although they have posted 2 clean sheets over the last 5 games in which Montreal has gone a win, a loss, and 3 draws. Because Courtois is new to the team and because Montreal has been dealing with a ton of injuries and Courtois is trying to figure out exactly what kind of team he has, there is a lot of change in the center backs often, and they're a young and unsettled back line. So it may not be a surprise that Montreal's defenses look so bad this year. Courtois came from Columbus Crew under Wilfred Nancy, where he was coaching Columbus Crew 2 for the last 2 years. And it's his first MLS head coaching gig. He also is in charge of Columbus's academy. So they've looked very shaky as they're trying to learn his style of play, and he's struggling to ingrain his philosophy with the Montreal players. And lastly, injuries. Players like Ghanaian forward Opoku has just returned to the lineup. He was out for since March 2nd against Dallas. Matías Coccaro came back from a knee injury that kept him out for 2 months. Fullback Raheem Edwards, who I mentioned, is out with a knee injury now. And Joseph Martinez hasn't played in over 2 months. And so on top of that, and we'll get into it, who will be missing for this team? Let's get into a little bit of the history. The teams are meeting for the 31st time. This is a rivalry that is usually right down the middle, and that's because the home team does real well in this series. The Red Bulls are just 2-10-2 in Montreal all the time, but they did win 2 years ago on their trip, where I think Lewis Morgan had a goal in a 1-0 victory in which Carlos Coronel stood on his head. Surprise. The team split their home games in 2023. The last trip was last April, where it was, I'm sure, much cooler than it will be on tomorrow night. And CFM had a 2-0 beatdown of the Red Bulls. Henri, who loved to play Montreal, is the all-time scorer. Corey Burke, Lewis Morgan, Luis Reyes are the active leaders. Each of them only have a single goal. So the Red Bulls will be without Cornell and Morgan. Reyes actually is off the injured list as of today, which is fantastic. I don't know if you're Schwartz, if you throw him on here, as he's coming back from a foot injury, maybe you wait, see how Sean Nealis and Ayla do. For the first time, Emil Forsberg finds himself listed as questionable for tomorrow night with his nagging foot injury. He told us, the media, yesterday, Monday, that it would be kind of a game time decision. He had not trained with the team this week, but Montreal is missing a ton of important players. Choinière and Piette are the sixes. They're the starting sixes for Montreal, and they will be with the Canadian national team, who open the Copa America the following night against Argentina. Raheem Edwards is injured. Ariel Lassiter, son of Rocket Roy Lassiter, the first MLS Golden Boot winner ever, is with Costa Rica for the Copa America. George Campbell, an American center back, is out with yellow cards, and then there's Joseph Martinez, who's also injured. Yikes. So what might we see tomorrow night? We will learn from our friend Tony Marinaro that the center back on this list, Waterman, actually was a late call up to the Canadian national team, so he will not be there. Jonathan Sirois has 4 clean sheets and has conceded 33 goals. Moving left to right around the back, Joaquin Sosa, the Uruguayan, has an assist. Fernando Alvarez, who Marinaro will praise, has a goal so far. Waterman won't play. It may be a Montreal 2 call-up. Gabriel Corbo, an Italian, and then Ruan, the Brazilian, who Red Bull fans, I think, should be familiar with. The sixes will be Nathan Saliba, a young Canadian, and Victor Wanyama, the aged Victor Wanyama, who still is rattling around in the Montreal lineup. And then ahead of them will be Bryce Duke, the young American, Matthias Kakaro, 3 goals and assists, and Sunisi Ibrahim, the Nigerian, with 5 goals. And I don't believe that he will be bothered by the extreme heat. He scored 4 goals in his last 5 games. So all of that said, sir, what are you thinking about for Wednesday night? And again, it is being in Montreal usually in June is an absolute treat. It is a phenomenal summer city to visit. Is it a phenomenal summer city when it's 90 degrees to kickoff? Probably not. But once again, the league screws the Red Bulls fans by putting this game on a weeknight. Not good. Best 3-day weekend in America in Eastern Canada, in Montreal. So, Mike, what do you think?
It's amazing. After all that.
And after all that.
0-0 draw. I mean, I don't know, like looking at that's not, it's looking at everything. Both teams are missing players, but I didn't realize how rough the Montreal situation was. Yes. When I'm just like looking at it, and it's just like the list is folding down to reveal more. Right. I'm gonna say that this is a game it feels so optimal for the Red Bulls to get the 3 points that they desperately need. And this could just be a 1-0 win to just skirt, take 3 points, get out there with your tail between your legs. It almost feels like that kind of game because their goalkeeper is standing on his head, and he got a clean sheet last week too. And
against RSL,
who are the
top of the West.
Yeah. I thought they went down for a second, but yeah, they're still top of the West. But this is a game where, they should win, but it's not going to be by a lot.
The interesting thing is that on Monday, after for the press availability, Schwartz was asked, will you be rotating your lineup? And he said, no. He said, there's only 4 days between these games. I'm planning on rotating my lineup for Saturday. Sometimes he's a little too transparent. I really enjoy him as a person. I think he's kind of a straight shooter, but you don't have to just answer us. You can just... Anyway, he said that we will likely see the same lineup. And I think principally because he feels, at least going forward, they're building the relationship and they're building the rhythm. And he wants to give them another go of, Dylan Nealis and Cam Harper, and Amaya, and just trying to get the forwards connected. So, second game in 4 days. And you pick. I mean, you want a 1-0 or you want a scoreless draw? What are you going to say?
I mean, I want a 1-0, and I will predict a 1-0. The one thing that scares me is Montreal's recent form. For as much we were just dogging them and saying they have 35 goals allowed this season, look at their last 4 games.
Yeah, they've cleaned it up a little bit.
They've made it up where Nashville, also a scoreless draw against Nashville, a draw 2-2 against Philly, and then the RSL one, and then a 4-2 win against DC United. And just looking at that, they are definitely a team that they could be a trap team that everyone says, oh, they're terrible. They're depleted roster. We're also depleted roster. What are you talking about? Right. I will also say that I think it's a 1-0 win. I do think you start to see the return of players like Forsberg and Reyes into the lineups. This is the time to do it because it's midweek and it's short rest for the guys who just played. You should make halftime subs and let these guys get their legs in.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I'll go with scoreless draw just to be different. Thank you for breaking it down. When we're back on Seeing Red, we're going to talk to Tony Marinaro of the SICK podcast in Montreal. Keep it here. The New York Soccer Roundup. Red Bulls getting ready for a midweek trip to Montreal. And a trip to Montreal in June, frankly, deserves a whole weekend. But the league has conspired against us playing this fixture on a weeknight. And very, very happy to welcome to Seeing Red from the SICK podcast, CF Montreal Talk. It's Tony Marinaro. How are you, Tony?
Mark, extremely well. Thanks for having me.
It's really my pleasure. So, Montreal was a team that was kind of coming along under Nancy. He wound up saying, thank you so much to the Saputos. And what we've seen is a team that, from everything we've read, struggling with injuries and international players away, as the Red Bulls are as well. What's the overall story of what's happening with CFM right now?
Well, the overall story is, like many teams, there hasn't been stability at the coaching position, unfortunately. They thought they had their guy in Wilfred Nancy, like you talked about a couple of years ago, who was a coach who actually started off in their academy and then was an assistant coach under a couple of coaches, built up a little bit of experience, and then was chosen to be the coach several years ago. In his first year, they slightly missed the playoffs just by a little bit. And in the second year, it was really a fantastic performance. The team overachieved under Nancy. They finished second in the East, a third overall in the league, considering what they spend or the lack thereof. It really was quite an accomplishment. Unfortunately for Wilfred Nancy, down the stretch when the window the second time around closed, the team did not go out and get him some reinforcements, which would have been great down the stretch. And of course, there was a situation where he and the president had a little bit of an altercation after the game. And then after that, Wilfred Nancy said, I'm done. The players got together, the president, the sporting director, they pleaded with him to stay. And in the end, he said, I'll stay under one condition. I'm doing it for the players, but I have an option that you guys were going to exercise for me to be back. I want you to decline that option because at the end of the year, I'm gone. And at the end of the year, he was gone. Fast forward, then they go out and they get Hernan Losada to be the next coach of CF Montreal. And unfortunately, I think Losada sold himself way too good because basically everything he promised, he did not deliver on, especially with the style of play. So the team drastically changed their style of play. And now they have Laurent Courtois, who came in, of course, from Columbus Crew of the MLS Next Pro. And Courtois sees football the same way Wilfred Nancy does. When you come to Montreal over the last couple of years, you've been told to adopt a formation, which is a 3-4-1-2 or a 3-4-2-1. Was very willing to do that. But when you adopt a new formation and you have a lot of new players, it takes a while to get used to. There's going to be some mistakes, especially out of the back, because they want to play out of the back. Every now and then the ball's going to end up in your net. This team is also at a disadvantage that because their stadium is not winterized and due to the weather here, and they didn't have a backup plan as a stadium, they have to play usually their first 5, 6, 7 games on the road every year. But they started well, and then all of a sudden they blew a couple of leads. Their defense fell apart a little bit. Their defensive game fell apart a little bit. And they ran into a real bad string of injuries, especially to their strikers, where at one point, Coccaro was out for 3 months. Martinez was out for about 3 months. Mason Toy was out for a while. Opoku was going to be out for a couple of months. And just now are those injured players starting to come back. So they're a little bit behind the 8 ball here. They do have the majority of their games left at home. They're going to have to win them. Yeah,
and this is a team that hasn't really been very impressive at home. Only 2 wins so far at home, and we're halfway through the season. The team's also given up more than 2 goals a match. I'm just kind of curious, in your last 5 games, you've got 2 scoreless draws, including a phenomenal result at home against RSL last week. So yeah. I'm just kind of curious, what is coming together for a team that gives up so many goals? It seems something seems to be working over the last couple weeks.
I'll tell you what's coming together is that some of the injured players are starting to come back. That's number one. Yeah. Jonathan Sirois is starting to or at least last game anyway, was absolutely fantastic. And he looked like the keeper that he was a year ago. He struggled with consistency this year. There's been a lot of ups and there's been a lot of downs. It's never quite been in the middle. But last game was very, very good. once again, and now they're starting to play a few more games at home. So a few more games at home, injured players coming back, Sirois starting to play better. The players starting to get accustomed to what Laurent Courtois wants them to do. The big question is whether or not it's going to be enough down the stretch, because once again, they've dug themselves a little bit of a hole, and it's time that they have to get out of it. I mean, the point on the weekend was encouraging because you go up against a Real Salt Lake team that was first in the West, but at the same time, in this league, you have to win,
games,
quarters of your games at home.
Yeah. We obviously know Josef Martinez very well at Red Bull after his time in Atlanta when those teams' rivalry was at an absolute peak. It seems that Ibrahim on your side has been a guy who's on fire, 4 goals in his last 5 matches. Talk to us a little bit about his game.
Ibrahim has he's disappointed in previous years. He was more known as a player who could come off the bench. He was more known as a player who would pretty much score only in Canadian Championship games or probably in some of the easier games. But this year, I got to tell you, I wasn't the president of the fan club, but he deserves a lot of credit because he scored some big goals. You've seen some nice finishes. You've seen him be able to play as a 9. You've seen him be able to play a little bit behind the striker as well. And he's given the team a jump when he's been on. Last game was not his best effort, but so far this season has been probably the best season that he's had since joining CF Montreal.
You said that there are a number of players returning.
Yeah.
And obviously in a 3-match week for both of these teams,
you
want to be really careful and you want to be recycling your players and make sure nobody gets too much of a load over the course of the week. On the Red Bull side, Sandro Schwartz told us the other day that there would be no squad rotation for tomorrow's game, but rather for the weekend.
That's a little bit that's a little bit risky there because if you're going to play 3 games in 8 days, if you want to keep the same formation, you're better off keeping the same formation in game 1 and in game 3, but not in game 1 and game 2.
Well, this is what he told us. New York is a team that obviously is suffering with Lewis Morgan, who'll be hopefully on the field tomorrow for Scotland, and Emil Forsberg apparently has a foot injury and may or may not participate, and putting it on the net is a challenge for them. If you're facing Montreal, talk to us a little bit about the style they play. I mean, where are the weak points? Where are teams breaking them down? Well,
if you're facing Montreal, there's a couple of things you want to do. Number one is you want to play with a high press, because this is a team that once again is not used to skipping lines. They're not used to playing long balls. Their coaches implemented a certain playing philosophy, and it's ball on the ground and it's play out of the back. So if you put a lot of pressure on them, it can lead to turnovers and it can lead to scoring chances. Another thing you're going to want to do, I think, is try and go at Montreal as quickly as you can, as early on in the game as you can. Let me explain. Some of the pillars on this team lie in the number 6 position with Matthew Choinière and Samuel Piette. Choinière maybe a little bit more of an 8. He plays a little bit more advanced than Piette does. They are Canadian internationals, though, and they've been called to international duty with the Canadians men's national team. And they're going to be part of, the Copa America tournament where Canada takes on Lionel Messi in Argentina on Thursday night. So they're missing.
Right.
Joel Waterman was not originally named to the Canadians men's national team, but has since been recalled because Junior Hoylett is out with an injury. So you're missing out on your starting center back. You're missing out on your starting 6. You're missing out on your starting 8. It's a team that does play a lot out of the back. Yeah. I would play a high press. I would force them, and I would take the game to them. And, Montreal is not a very good team when they trail. Yeah. And we talked about some of the injuries to the forwards. Kokaro came back last game, but he only got in like 20 or so minutes. Toy came back and he got in about 30 minutes or so. And the same thing for Opoku, who got in about 20 minutes or so. So, they're just starting to come back from injury. They're not at the top of their form. They're forwards. They're missing a 6. They're missing an 8. They're missing a 5. Their goalkeeper has been up and down. If I was New York, I would take the game to Montreal. I really would.
Yeah, I mean, New York's game, as I'm sure you know, is centered around the press, a little less exclusively during the Schwartz era. And when the team scores first, it's very, very tough for them. I also saw the interesting stat that you guys are down at the bottom of the list with goal difference after the 75th minute.
Yes.
I mean, the Montreal teams of old, rather, when Montreal has beaten New York in the past, it has often been on a late goal. And New York certainly does not have a lot of success playing in Montreal over the years. And so I'm just kind of curious, what happens? Is it just running out of gas? Is it?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, right? There's already a lack of depth on the team to begin with. We're talking about the lowest salaries in all of MLS. They're the lowest paying team. If you add, the U22 players and all that, nobody pays their players less than CF Montreal. So you're obviously not going to get a tremendous amount of depth.
Right.
And the depth that you do have is not going to be a lot of quality depth. And then add those injuries to it, add the players away, and add a goalkeeper who's not been on, his most consistent. Add a new coach, add a new playing philosophy, and that's the results that it gives. So
yeah, it's hurtful.
It was. I think we all expected them to have some problems out of the gates. The injuries coming back are going to take a big load off of everyone's shoulders. Another key player for Montreal, or has the ability to be, and is Jules Anthony Vilsaint, who is a 21-year-old. 6'4" striker.
Wow.
Who can play in a 1-striker formation, who can play in a 2-striker formation, who can play behind the strikers. And unfortunately for him, he has struggled with injuries over the last little while. He played an incredible game versus Inter Miami, where everyone was expecting the Lionel Messi show, and they got the Jules Anthony Vilsaint show instead.
Okay.
But he had to pull up a couple of weeks ago where it looked like he pulled his hamstring. And so, once he comes back, if he can be healthy, he'll be a welcome addition to the team.
Tony, the story of the club in Montreal going back to 93, I feel like has always been one that is fighting for relevancy in a town that obviously is all in on the Canadiens. And obviously the team name and the crest, and it seems like the Saputos have really done everything they can to make it difficult to really buy all in what's happening here. How is with the understanding that it's a new coach and a new system, and we're trying and we're building for the future, how is the team doing in Montreal right now?
Look, they'll tell you that 15,000 plus season tickets were sold.
Wow.
Which is a huge increase on the 8,000 of 1 year ago. And I'm going to tell you that the difference of the 7,000,
yes,
probably 6,500 of those 7,000 bought season tickets so they can see Lionel Messi.
Got it. It's the Messi effect.
I would think it's the Messi effect, number one. Number two, it is a Montreal Canadiens first. It's a Montreal Canadiens City second. It's a Montreal Canadiens City third.
Yes. The
owner in the past has said, we don't hear much from him lately. I don't remember when was the last time he spoke, to tell you the truth. He's in the past, he had said that, he called on the media for their help. He almost blamed the lack of buzz on the team, on the media. By the way, it's if you want to get the media on your side, criticizing them is probably not the way to do it. But the media does have a responsibility in all this. And unfortunately, the different media outlets push hockey all the time. But I say this, if the team wants the media to help them, they have to also help themselves.
Yep.
They have to help themselves in making players available. I host a podcast on CF Montreal. I go live twice a week. The last time I had anyone on from the club was probably about 16 months ago.
Oh my.
If you walk out in the street and you're looking for a billboard of a player or something about the team, you'll probably see one in front of their training facility. You won't see any other ones in the city. Not every media outlet has interviews with players, or I don't remember when was the last time. Well, the president, the last time he spoke was he called a press conference because the team and sporting director Olivier Renard parted ways, so he had to comment on that. But since then, we haven't heard from him at all. So you don't hear from the owner, you don't hear from the president. They pick and choose who they give the interviews to. Yeah. You know, you don't ruffle too many feathers. Chances are you're going to get an interview, and if they don't like what you're saying, chances are it's going to be a lot more difficult. Yeah. They'll tell you you're negative. I'll tell you that their reality is negative. So that's where we are.
Tony Marinaro talks about CF Montreal when other folks don't at CF Montreal Talk at the SICK podcast. Tony, thank you.
I want to mention one last thing going, sure. And I talked about this and I broke this news earlier today. Back on July 28th of 2023, CF Montreal acquired Colombian/Mexican left-footed center back Fernando Alvarez.
Okay.
He's a 2003. They paid about $1 million for him. The last game versus Real Salt Lake, he was without a doubt the best player on the field, and it wasn't even close. Sirois in goal was very, very good too. He was absolutely outstanding. I think he probably stopped at least 2 Real Salt Lake goals himself. He was a pillar on the back line, and there were representatives from a Liga MX club out of Mexico that were there at the stadium specifically to see him. It appears like the club is open to selling this player, and we know that is their philosophy, to buy young players and to sell them. Yeah. But I just don't get wanting to sell a player less than a year after you've had him. His last 3 games were very encouraging. His last game, he was unbelievable. You hold on to this player for 3 years, you probably end up getting $4 or $5 million for him. You sell him in the next month, you're probably going to end up getting less than $2 million from him. So that's something to keep an eye on. I don't quite understand if they want to sell him now, but take a look at this player. All eyes are going to be on him because he knows that there's interest in him. And last game, he was absolutely fantastic.
All right. Tony, thank you so much. Where can folks find you? Where can folks find you?
Yeah, they can definitely check me out on YouTube and search the SICK podcast, CF Montreal Talk. And we usually go live about twice a week. And so that's where they can find me. And they can find me on the application formerly known as Twitter, now known as X, at Tony Marinaro, TonyMarinaro. There you have it.
As it says there on your screen. We've got more Seeing Red coming up after this short break. We are back at Seeing Red, the New York Soccer Roundup. Did not mention off the top, please the liking, please the subscribing. We are, again, continuing to build our audience. Like, subscribe, review. Also, we encourage you to email us at seeingredny@gmail.com because we read emails over the air. And the first one is from our friend Nick Guarino, who says, "Hey, Mark, love the show. Always wishing the best for Joe." Yes. And hope we can hear from him in the future. We will see when we can make that happen. I'm curious what your thoughts are on what we really need to focus on during the summer window. Is Van Zier a buyout candidate at this point? I know we have eyes on a true number 9, but I think Morgan has been great in that frontline attacking role. Do we go for more fortitude in the midfield in wake of Stroud's injuries? What is your take on the biggest need? Mike Batista, what is your take on the team's biggest need in order? Let's three needs. What are they?
Goal scorer, midfielder, and midfielder. I don't think we need defense. We need goal scoring, but we need a striker up top. We've needed that since Henry. We've needed that since PWP left. Yeah. I keep saying this. Everyone's saying it, but like that's always been the top thing. We thought fans expected that to be Forsberg, and I don't know why they expected that because that's not the type of player he was in Europe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty much, we don't need a defender. We don't need goalkeeping. We just need 2 midfielders. We need 2 more midfielders and like a striker.
2 turntables and a microphone. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree that you're going to have a guy that you have to put the ball in the net. I don't know. I mean, I think we know what Elias Manuel is. I think we know what he is. He is a streaky guy who can score goals, but the streaks and the droughts are not in proportion. It's mostly drought with dribbles of streak. And I don't know how much longer you give him here. 5? What?
No, I have a question to go back to the email real quick.
About buying out Van Zier's
Yeah,
contract?
why are we talking about buying out Dante Van Zier where you have a perfectly ungood Corey Burke to buy out?
I mean, Corey Burke as a 4th forward. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a great. Well, I think other than the notion that Van Zier is more expensive, and then in theory, you could turn that into more cap space for other players. But and you'd have another DP. I don't think they're going to walk from Van Zier. I mean, he hasn't been here 2 years. So, but I would support Corey Burke action.
Yes,
Thank you, Nick, for your note. Here's Martin Hollander, who actually, after writing this a few days, he said that he was in a better mindset. But nevertheless, I'm going to read his email because it's funny. Joe is in our thoughts every day and always. Yes, agreed. I've been meaning to write you for a while, but the season was quite frankly going better than I expected. There's been a few clunkers, but mostly it's been the best season since 2018. I agree. However, last week's game against Nashville was disturbing. I think the team is overall better than last year, and Sandro is a better coach than they've had in years. That, unfortunately, does not change the fact that the team is over-reliant on Morgan and, to some extent, Forsberg. I think that is a theme that we have been discussing throughout the show. Nashville is by far the worst team the Red Bulls have played this season, and they could not get a goal to save their lives. I've been a big proponent, and that's a team with Hani Mukhtar, by the way.
That's the worst team that we've played.
I'm not sure. I've been a big proponent of Van Zier, and LS has talent as well, but they both have to go in the summer transfer window. Okay. All right, I'll read the email and then we'll talk. The team as a whole look like they don't know what to do in front of the goal, but those strikers just can't perform. Side note, Zimmerman must really regret staying at Nashville out of the U.S. team, playing for easily the MLS worst team. That's Martin. I mean, Zimmerman's getting paid. He's getting paid. So, I mean, Nashville is, go for it.
What do you mean Nashville's the worst team in MLS?
Well,
are you looking at Orlando, who we also we beat Orlando 1-0 because of a free kick, and New England we couldn't beat. I know we're depleted, but Nashville is the worst team.
Well, they did just fire the coach, and I assure you that once the new coach gets going, he'll be able to make amends. I mean, they have some very strong players. Joe Willis is a solid goalkeeper who made a couple of really good saves. They have the former MLS MVP and Hani Mukhtar. That's questionable. I guess the question is, and again, when people say we've got to transfer them out, I think there has to be an understanding that for a player to leave, you have to actually have a buyer, right? It's not just, I don't want this player on anymore, so I'm going to sell them for a ham sandwich and a bag of balls. But, the idea that you may not want someone means that you have to actually build a resume and, make a deal. So you need to have a willing party on the other side. I don't think you get rid of both of them. And as you said, Mike, Corey Burke as well.
I mean, look, you're not, this Red Bull's not a team that's just going to ship a guy off to like New Zealand or something where they could just get rid of him. But no, they're going to, they're totally teams that would buy Van Zier or Elias. And I just don't know if Red Bull would sell them to those teams. I don't know what they could gain from selling them that is worthwhile to this team's needs right now.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you so much, Martin, for your note. And again, you did say this was written like moments after the scoreless draw, and I understand the frustration. Lastly,
it was a boring game. I can imagine how mad he was.
Well, I mean, when you come so close over and over and over again to getting the goal, capital T, capital G, it makes you, want to throw something. All right. Angel Credomai writes our last email. Hey, good evening, Mark and Joe and Mike. I wanted to check in on your views regarding the MLS table and what you believe is the midpoint in the 2024 season. If the Red Bulls will be able to secure a home playoff spot, I understand we're having an amazing home record and would hope to see future wins away from Red Bull Arena, cough, cough, Montreal. I suspect that Columbus, Toronto, NYC are keen to secure those higher playoff seeds as well. As always, thank you for your analysis and weekly shows. You are welcome, Angel. So, right now, New York is third in the East. You have to finish in the top 4 to get a home playoff game.
But everyone gets a home playoff game now.
Well, to get home field advantage, if you will. They're 1 point above NYCFC, who have a game in hand. Charlotte is 1 point behind them. Columbus is 1 point behind them, and they have 3 games in hand on New York. Woof. Then there's Toronto with 24 points, Philly and Nashville with 20 points. I guess if Nashville is the worst team ever, then what is Philly? in tied for 8th and 9th place, DC with 19, and it kind of drops from there. I mean, New York has certainly done enough in the first half of the season to feel really good about their chances for getting a home playoff spot or finishing top 4.
No, because they haven't done enough. There's too many points left on the table that are going to that have the possibility to cost them down the board. Like you just said, they're between 6th and 3rd right now is 1 game.
Yeah. And
there's nothing to say that the teams that are below the Red Bulls are not going to slow down. Just like the Red Bulls could keep up the pace, ties here, wins here, and they'll finish top 4. But I just have this inkling feeling in the back of my head that there's too many games where we left 2 points on the table that are going to catch up with us, and we'll finish like 5th. Something like that. It's still going to be a strong season. It's still going to be a good
best
playoff
season since 2018.
Yeah. But when I hear things like, oh, we're having like the best season in 2018, we could be so much better in securing that spot far more. And I think there's too many chances to trip up, especially with a long break in the middle of the season for Leagues Cup where we don't know what's going to happen in a month.
Well, time moves in one direction and we can't go backwards, but what we can do is hope against hope that Jokin brings in some talent into this team during the summer window. If he doesn't, I think you're going to certainly hear it. But let's look at the remaining schedule for the Red Bulls. It's crazy to think that we're now in the second half. Remaining schedule. So Montreal, they have Toronto on the weekend. It's fireworks night on Saturday night for Toronto FC. Home for DC United, at Philly. They're playing Philly for the first time in the 18, 19, 20, 21st game in the season. We get our first Philly game. And they are definitely a team in transition. And it looks like Julian Carranza is about to be sold. And I think, Philly's kind of aging out. Like they had their chance to win their trophy and they didn't do it. Then they have to go to Colorado, which say what you want about Chris Armas at Red Bulls. He's doing very well with them now. He has a team of MLS veterans and they're playing well. Then there goes Mike. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Then they host Montreal. Let me take that off my face. Then they host Montreal on a Wednesday. They host Cincinnati, which I like our chances. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks.
They host Montreal, and they usually do very well there. They host Cincinnati, which, again, they match up very well against Cincinnati. They go to Charlotte, then home for Philly and home for Sporting KC, which is having one of their worst seasons in club history. And I don't know what it's going to take to dislodge Peter Vermees, who's been there for an eon. They go to Chicago, we haven't played Atlanta. We play Atlanta for the first time in game 29. Home for Atlanta, home for NYC, at Toronto, at Atlanta, and home for the Crew. I mean, I think there are 10 wins there. I really do. I think this team can win 10 more games. And if they win 10 more games and get to 60 points, they will certainly be in the top 4 of the East.
when you say it like that, it's really hard to argue. Maybe it's just the pessimism in me. And I do not shy away from that. No, that's a very compelling argument. And looking at the remaining schedule, I don't know the SOS for the rest of the league. There's a lot of positives, and I think that probably the Red Bulls have the strongest strength or the easiest strength of schedule going forward, at least in the East. Yeah, there's
Don't play Miami again and have Cincinnati at home and have Columbus at home.
And they still have the Atlanta games, and Atlanta's just swirling the bowl right now.
Yeah. So in any case, thank you so much for your email. Angel, we really appreciate everyone who wrote in today. I'd like to thank Zach Feldman for stats and Tony Marinaro for being a first-time guest on Seeing Red, and you, Mike Batista. Thank you for joining. Did you have fun? Where can people find you?
Oh, I always have fun coming on this show. It's great.
Awesome.
You can find me on the Twitters. I'm not calling it X.
Nope.
At Michael Batista, same as my name. You can find me writing for New York Sports Nation, Hudson River Blue, and the Cup.us and US Soccer.
Awesome. Joe, we are thinking about you every day. Please get better. And thanks for watching. For Mike Batista, I'm Mark Fishkin. Thanks for watching and listening to Seeing Red number 578. Don't think we'll be back before DC for Toronto on the weekend, but nevertheless, America's hat. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.